Welcome again to Bedtime Stories for Tiny Microbes. Today we're going to read another vintage tale. This one is called The Wise King and the Bee. The Wise King and the Little Bee. Many, many years ago, there lived in the holy city of Jerusalem a mighty king whose name was Solomon, and his fame was in all the nations around. For Solomon had a wise and understanding heart. He was wiser than any man who lived before him and any man who came after. And all the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, and he always judged wisely and well. Now, I suppose I were to tell you the little bee, a little tiny, insignificant bee, once proved itself to be bee wiser than the wisest of men. You would probably not believe it, yet it is true. There is an old story to prove it, and because Solomon was as humble as he was wise, the story has a happy ending. And here it is. It happened that among the countries which rang with the fame of Solomon's wisdom and riches was the country over which ruled the proud and beautiful Queen of Sheba. She longed to prove to everyone that Solomon was not the wisest man in the world. If only, she said to herself, I could set him some difficult task which he could not perform. Or better still, ask him a simple question which he would not be able to answer. She thought, and at last an idea came to her. She called together all the most skilled craftsmen in the land, and she commanded them to fashion for her a bouquet of flowers. It was to be of roses of Sharon and lilies of the valley, and the flowers were to be made so beautifully, so perfectly, that no one standing within a few inches of them would be able to tell that they were not real. The craftsmen went to work, and shortly afterwards brought the bouquet to the queen. The little bells of the lily of the valley and the purple blossoms of the roses of Sharon were so perfect that the queen could not believe that they were not real. And her skilled workmen had labored long and hard to distill a perfume that matched perfectly the fragrance of real flowers. The queen was more than pleased. Now we shall see, she said, how wise Solomon truly is. So she announced that she would pay him a visit. To do him honor, she said. And she came to Jerusalem with a very great train, with camels that bore spices and much gold, and with boxes full of precious stones. Solomon received her graciously. The best rooms in the palace were offered to her and her companions. The finest musicians and dancers entertained her, and a lavish banquet was planned for her. On the evening of the banquet, the queen sent her most trusted servant to procure a bouquet of real roses of Sharon and lilies of the valley. When the merrymaking and feasting were in full swing, the queen left the gay company and soon returned with the two bouquets. Everyone gasped. Never had there been seen such beautiful bouquets, such perfect flowers, and one the exact copy of the other. O great and mighty king, said the Queen of Sheba, standing at a little distance from Solomon and holding out the two bouquets, the whole world rings with stories of your wisdom. Tell me, you who can always see the truth. Which of these bouquets is made up of real flowers, and which is false? There was a deep silence in the vast hall. Not one person there could see any difference between the two bouquets. The little white bells of the lilies of the valley swayed gently in each, and the lovely purple blossoms of the roses of Sharon sent out a faint perfume from each. The deep silence was broken by a whispering and murmuring which started in one corner, traveled to another, and soon filled the vast hall. Solomon leaned forward and wrinkled his brow. He heard the excited and anxious mutterings of his people, but both bouquets looked exactly alike. Perhaps they were both real, or perhaps they were both false. Suddenly, above the hum in the hall, Solomon's sharp ear caught another sound. It was made by a little bee buzzing against a window. Solomon smiled. He was wise enough to know that all wisdom comes from God, and God has given to each of his creatures a special wisdom of its own. So he motioned to one of his servants to open the window. No sooner was this done than the bee flew into the room. The king's eyes followed it. Straight and sure it flew to one of the bouquets, and was soon lost to sight deep within the blossoms. So engrossed in watching the queen or in whispering to one another were were the people that no one noticed what had happened. The king sat up very straight and met the queen's mocking eyes. "My gracious and honored guest," he said, "the true flowers are those," and he pointed to the bouquet chosen by the little bee. The queen was astonished. Then she smiled and bowed. "It was a true report that I heard in my own land of your acts and of your wisdom," she said, "but I did not believe the words until I came and saw for myself. You have wisdom beyond the fame of which I have heard. Happy are your men, happy are your servants, happy are all those who stand before you always and hear your wisdom." Then a great shout and roar of praise rang out from all the people. But the king himself was silent. In his heart, he was giving thanks for the little bee that had come to help him. Now, I have another story, and I like this one. It's called The Stubborn Sillies. Now you shall hear what happened to a couple who were not only stubborn, but silly as well. A man and wife they were, and they lived a long time ago in a cottage high on a windy hill. One evening the man had just settled himself into his rocking chair, with his pipe in his mouth, and his wife had just begun to prepare supper, when a gust of wind pushed open the cottage door. It set the windows to rattling and the dishes on the cupboard shelves to dancing. "Husband," said the woman, "get up and close the door." "I'll do no such thing," answered he. "I didn't open it, and I'll not close it. You close it yourself." "I didn't open it either," said the wife, "and I'll certainly not close it." And I see Marisha is commenting, "Is that Bob?" Yes, this is Bob. He's joining. They are joining us again for this evening's stories. "I'll do no such thing," answered he. "I didn't open it, and I'll not close it. You close it yourself." "I didn't open it either," said the wife, "and I'll certainly not close it." "Very well," said the husband. "You didn't open it, and I didn't open it. But whichever of us speaks first from now on shall be the one to close the door." To this silly remark the wife agreed. The wind whistled in and out of the cottage. The man sat stubbornly in his chair and shivered, and the wife had all she could do to keep her teeth from chattering as she went about making supper. But neither of those silly people would close the door. Presently the woman placed on the table a large pat of yellow butter. She poured good rich cream into a low bowl, but she did not ask her husband to come to the table. So he just sat there. A hungry pussycat wandered by. She looked in at the open door. The man did not throw his slippers at her, and the woman did not seize the broom, so the cat came in. Neither the man nor the woman cried "Scat, scat!" So the cat jumped up on the table, and soon her little pink tongue made short work of the butter and the cream. When she had finished, the cat jumped down to the floor and began to wash herself from tail tip to ear tip. And still neither the man nor the woman said one word. The man then put on the table a platter of sizzling meat patties, and again she did not ask her husband to come and eat. A large hungry dog came sniffing along. How good the patties smelled! With one leap the dog was in the cottage. Neither the man nor the woman said a single word, so the dog jumped up on the table, and gulp, gulp, there was an end to all the meat. Feeling very good, the dog licked his chops, jumped down to the floor, turned around and around and around, and soon was fast asleep in a big furry ball. And still neither the man nor the woman said one word. Then the woman put on the table a fresh cherry pie and a big pitcher of warm milk, and still she didn't ask her husband to come and eat. A thief came along. He poked his head in at the open door. The man and the woman made no move. The thief stepped cautiously into the cottage. All remained quiet. The thief then sat down at the table, and quicker than it takes to tell, he ate up the whole pie and drank all the milk. Then he gathered all the spoons and knives and forks together and put them into his pouch. These two must be deaf and dumb and blind, he said to himself. Now let's see, what else can I take? His eyes went around the room and soon spotted the woman's best china teapot. Now there's something, he said aloud, that should fetch me a pretty penny. He went over to the cupboard and reached for the teapot. But at this, the woman burst out at the top of her lungs. Vagabond! Rogue! Thief! Isn't it enough that you have eaten the whole pie and drunk all the milk and stolen all our silver? Must you have my best teapot too? Her cries so startled the cat and dog that both jumped to their feet, the cat hissing and spitting, and the dog growling and barking. As for the thief, he was so astonished at all the sudden noise that he was frightened out of his wits. He dropped the teapot, clutched the silver tightly to him, and took to his heels. Out the open door he sped, with the cat and the dog in pursuit. After them, man, cried the woman. Will you sit there and do nothing while we lose everything? But the stubborn, silly man, with all the food gone, the silver stolen, and the best teapot in 1,000 pieces on the floor, only shrugged his shoulders and said, Wife, you spoke first. Now go close the door. What do you think, Bob? I guess I have to close the door. Have a good night, all.